This is a memo to my former Liberal and National Party colleagues. With the last week of Parliament due to commence on Monday, and with the age verification, the social media age verification bill coming before the Parliament, which you guys have said you're going to support. For goodness sake, wake up. Wake up what is happening here. This bill is nothing other than a Trojan horse to implement digital ID, biometric digital ID across the country. Because how else can you prove that someone is over the age of 16 if they log on to the internet? Remember what the Liberal Party, our beliefs, say when you go in and before you vote on this bill. Remember what you're meant to stand for. You're meant to stand for in our beliefs, in the inalienable rights and freedoms of all people. And we work towards a lean government that minimises interference in our daily lives. How can you require a system where every Australian must verify their age by a biometric government-controlled digital ID and say that you believe in the concept of government minimising the interference in people's daily lives? This bill is completely against Liberal Party ideology and philosophy. It has nothing to do with protecting the children. And secondly, how can you let a bill go through? How can you sanction and approve a Senate committee inquiry process into this that gives the public just 24 hours to make a submission? We've seen how things have turned around in the public debate when the public have had time to analyse things. The voice referendum. We've seen the mis- and disinformation bill, how over time people became aware of the faults and the unintended consequences. How can you allow just 24 hours for this bill to go through? And what about all the unanswered questions of this bill? Just go through the list of some of the things that no one can answer in this bill. Firstly, the bill doesn't set out how this scheme will be implemented. It gives a blank cheque to the E-Safety Commissioner. Does anyone in the Liberal Party really think it is a good idea to give a blank cheque to the E-Safety Commissioner, a disgruntled ex-Twitter employee, about how Australians have to go about logging on to the internet and logging on to X? Why would you give the E-Safety Commissioner a blank cheque? Because that is what you are voting for with this legislation. And how will it apply to tourists coming into the country? Will they have separate rules and regulations? Will there be one requirement for Australian citizens and one rule for tourists? How will a tourist prove they have to have some form of special digital ID if they're in the country? And what about Australian tourists going overseas? Will we be free from the burden of this digital ID requirement? So can an Australian 15-year-old go to China and log on to TikTok, but that same Australian 15-year-old here in Sydney can't log on because the government's banned it? Yeah, you could be banned in Australia, but not banned in China for logging on to TikTok. And what about the teenagers in this country that are socially isolated for whatever reason, for distance, or as I said, for whatever reason, they become socially isolated and rely upon their social media, their favourite social media platform, to communicate with friends and family? What effect will the government coming in and cutting off those channels of communication for those teenage kids, what effect will that have? Can you answer that question? Until all these questions are answered, you must not let this bill proceed through Parliament. As I said, it is against Liberal Party values. Please, surely there is someone left in the Liberal Party that will stand up and speak about this in the party room on Tuesday. And hopefully, at the very least, block it. Let's have a proper conversation over the Christmas period. Let's work through all these unintended consequences. As I said, you can never trust Labor. You shouldn't be joining hands with the Labor Party on this. History's shown you can't trust them. They are driving this through as a Trojan horse to control the free speech of Australians and to put more and more restrictions upon all Australians accessing the internet. Anyone that believes in what the Liberal Party say their values are should be against this.